Disc 5, Serving a Higher Purpose, Part 1. Welcome back to the Leadership Edition of Live on Purpose. In this session, you will learn that you've been called to a higher purpose. Your life is more than the sum of your experiences. There is a much bigger plan at work. So, let's dive right into Live on Purpose, Disc 5.
The towel represents service. That's what it represents. But you cannot have service for God until supper is ended. It is significant to note in the text that Jesus did not gird himself with a towel until supper was ended. The feeding phase being ended, it should end in service, not gluttony. The feeding is the place where God fuels those that will burn off the fuel in service. He does not just feed you for your entertainment, for your enjoyment, or even for your enrichment. He feeds those that serve. I pause not because I ran out of things to say. I want that to soak. He feeds those that serve. He said, I give seed to the sower. I don't give seed to the collector. I don't give seed for decoration. I don't give seed so that you can have a feeling of security. He said, I give seed to people who are actively doing something with what I have given them. In other words, God says, I want to play catch with you. He says, the more you throw out, the more I will throw back to you. I give seed to the sower. I give bread to the eater. I give it to you on the basis of your appetite. And Jesus was sitting with his disciples. It is toward the end of his life on earth. Everything he did had to count. If you knew you only had a year to live, or 6 months to live, or a month to live, or a week to live, would you argue with people about foolishness? Would you worry about some of the things that you're worried about right now? You would prioritize at the highest level of priority what you were going to do with the time you had left. This is the final moments of the life of Jesus Christ. It seems strange to me that in the final moments of his life, he would wash feet. They call it bucket list now. And they got movies on the bucket list and the things that people want to do before they die. And I've never heard anybody say, I've heard them say, well, you know, I want to go to Switzerland, it's on my bucket list. Or I want to meet so-and-so, it's on my bucket list. I want to go here. So I've never heard anybody say that they wanted to wash feet on their bucket list. And yet in the final moments of Christ's life, the thing he prioritized was getting down on the floor and washing someone's feet. That level of importance is mind-blowing, but you will never have it if you stay stuck at the dinner table, coming to feed, coming to get what you can get, eating over and over again, never using any of the fuel that you get from the messages, just collecting it for your own entertainment and enrichment. You should be burning off on Monday what you got on Sunday. You should be using it for some goal, for some purpose, for something that really matters. And the Bible said, and supper being ended. Now, he didn't immediately gird himself with the towel. The Bible said, and supper being ended, he rose up and laid aside his garments. So the second thing I want you to understand is that you cannot serve your God with your agenda still on. Until you are willing to lay aside your agenda and say, Lord, I am available to you, you won't be ready to really serve with the robust way that you need to be able to serve. Write this down. Selfish people don't serve. Selfish people don't serve. They don't serve the Lord. They don't serve their family. They don't serve their neighbors. They don't serve their generation. Everything about selfish people centers around their own comfort and their own well-being. They want to be served. They want to get served. They will critique the way you serve them. They have high standards of what it requires to please them, but they never consider that they are to serve. And if Christ, who is the God we worship, served, then there is no position, no level of education, no level of income, no level of wealth, no level of anything else that exempts you from service. Why is that? You must understand that the acquisition of stuff does not make you happy. You either learn this now or you learn it later. Sooner or later, you realize stuff is just stuff. And the more you collect of it, after a while, when you go through battles and tests, you would be shocked how little stuff helps you in a storm. When you really need somebody to be there for you, to stand by you, to comfort you, to build you up, you would be surprised how little stuff will aid you when the rubber meets the road. You would be surprised how little joy and fulfillment you get out of collecting stuff. If you don't use it to give, to help, to encourage in some way, it is the weirdest thing. Some of the greatest, happiest moments of my life has not been when I got money, it's been when I used the money to help somebody else. To be in a position where you can help somebody else is a wonderful thing. I'm not talking about somebody who's just greedy. I'm talking about somebody who's really in need and really in trouble and can't fix it for themselves, and it's within your power to do it. It is the greatest high in the world to get back in your car and realize you have helped somebody over a hurdle in their life. It is a wonderful thing. It is an amazing thing. It is an incredible thing to be able to do that. And Jesus is trying to equip his disciples. He's talking to his leadership. He's talking to his elders. And he is talking to people who have been arguing about who's going to sit on the right side and who's going to sit on the left side. Who are you going to remember when you get to the kingdom? And who's going to get this and who's going to get that? They had all kinds of debates about that, and Jesus didn't do anything. He just got up. He laid aside his garment, girded himself with the towel, and got down on the floor. In biblical tradition, those who got down on the floor and washed feet generally did it when you first came in the house. Nobody had washed the feet of anybody who came in the house. They were eating with dirty feet. In biblical times, your main mode of transportation was to walk. And you walked wearing sandals. And so by the time you got to your guest house, you were carrying all the dust from your journey. And the washing of the feet was the way that a host washed away the sands collected from your journey, saying, being in my house is to be a refreshing experience for you. But no one had refreshed them. Nobody had honored them. Nobody had recognized them. And everybody's sitting around because whenever a leader says, I'm getting ready to leave, everybody up under them starts dividing up the turf. Well, who's going to get this and who's going to get that? It's just like funerals almost tear families up. You don't get mama's watch. Mama meant for me to have the watch. It's that kind of spirit that is pervasive in the world today. Everybody wants to know, what am I going to get? What's coming my way? What's coming my direction? How are you going to establish me? Who's next in line? If you really want to wreck this church in 5 minutes, just start preaching something like you're next. And people will dance out their shoes. They will break their weaves down shouting about who's going to be next, because everybody wants to be next to get something. The reason we cannot have marriages is because everybody gets married wanting the marriage to be there for them. And because when two people get together and two selfish people get together, their marriage does not serve any purpose. They quickly get a list of you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do the other, because their focus is not on giving, their focus is on receiving. And a selfish daddy and a selfish mama will produce a selfish child, and everybody in the house will be fighting for turf because nobody has been taught how to serve. Gone are the days when we trained our children to serve and divided up responsibilities and said it's your job to take out the trash and it's your job to wash the dishes and it's your job to dry the dishes. We are not training people to serve anymore. We are training people to eat. And they grow up and they don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to do anything but eat. They don't know how to do anything but take. They don't know how to do anything but use. And when life demands any kind of service, they feel like they're being abused and mistreated, and they feel like the world has turned against them because you have prepared them for a world that does not exist. People who train their children to serve will always have a job. It may not be the job you want, but you will always be able to eat. You will always be able to take care of yourself. But people who have only been trained to take, they will be jobless real quick, because there aren't many jobs available for you to just come and get what you need. You have to lay aside your garment, humble yourself, and prepare yourself to serve somebody. I'm telling you, you can't get rid of somebody who knows how to serve. They will always have something to do. They'll make a job. They'll create a job, because money follows service. If it doesn't serve a purpose, it has no value. The only real value that anything has is when it serves a purpose. And the greater purpose it serves, the greater it is funded. It is funded because it serves a purpose. And I thought this Sunday morning I would ask you a question, a very strong question, a very soul-searching question. What purpose do you serve? What do people get when they get you, and what do they lose when they lose you? What would they say they would not have if you walked out of the room? What purpose do you, I'm going to mess with you a little bit. I don't promise you a shout. I'm a little old school. I'm a little out of date. I'm a little old fashioned. But my mother taught me, make folk miss you when you're gone. Make them miss you when you're gone. Make them say, if you were here, you could have done this, and you would have done that, and you would have done the other. What would they miss if you went away? You just cannot be a person who lives in regret. You make mistakes, you acknowledge the mistake, you do whatever you can to correct the mistake, but to wallow in the abyss of disappointment takes away the flame and the passion, the creativity that's necessary to be progressive. You have to be able to say that was then, this is now, and move forward. Even not only past mistakes, but even past successes. To become so caught up in what you accomplished 10 years ago. What are you doing now? So whatever it was, good or bad, let it go and let's move forward to the next thing. Because when you do that, it stirs creativity, it releases passion, it motivates you to take action, and it puts you in a community of people who are not procrastinators. We all draw what we are. So if you are a procrastinator, you will surround yourself with people who procrastinate, and the entire engine stalls. If you want to be an action person, you have to be around action people, because action people will not tolerate procrastinators in close proximity. Jesus laid aside his garments. And one of the most challenging things you may ever do is to lay aside your garments. Some people have never done it in all of their lives. Some people are 40 and 50 and 60 years old, and they have never laid aside their garments. They have never laid aside their agenda. They're married, been married 10 and 20 years, and they have never laid aside their list of complaints. Well, Lord, they're not saying much this morning. Should I go ahead with it? Yes, sir. You would think if Jesus was getting ready to go away and he was equipping men who would give their lives for him, his final summarization of significance would be very important. And he teaches them servitude. There's sometimes I'm studying for a message and I get fascinated over some little biblical nugget I found, and I've researched it and I laid it out, but it doesn't pass this final test that I take my messages through. Does it serve a purpose? It might be true, it might be enlightening, it might be exciting to those of you who are interested in theology, but if it doesn't serve a purpose, me standing around here parading something that I learned or I studied does not add any value. Value goes along with purpose. You don't have to, as a businessman, you don't have to work nearly as hard to market something that serves people. But when you have to talk people into something hour after hour after hour after hour, trying to convince them to want something, the reason it's so difficult and expensive is that you're trying to get them to want something that they do not need. You don't have a hard time getting people to want something that they need. If I have a need for it, I will pay for it. If I have a need for it, I'll get up out of the bed in the middle of the night and get in the car and go get it. If I have a need for it, I will save money, lay away. I will pull out my credit card. I will find a way if I have a need for it. If people have a need for you, they will overcome every obstacle to get to you or what you have. But when they know that getting you adds nothing to their lives, you have to market real hard. You have to wear extra makeup. You got to get a tighter girdle. You got to walk with a better switch. You got to do all kinds of stuff trying to talk people into wanting something that provides no value. What purpose do, oh, it's going to be tough. What purpose? What purpose do you serve? They'll be laying off people in a corporation, and they will get right to you and circle around you and say, no, we got to have her because we need her for the company to go forward. They lay off the most quickly the people they can do without. Ooh. Well, if you think that was dry, wait till I hit you with this. The Lord of glory, surrounded by the royal diadem of heaven, humbles himself, pours himself out of his pre-existent glory, his preeminent grace, denies himself of the glory that he had with the Father before the foundations of the world, and takes on the form of a servant. The girding himself with the towel is a physical illustration of what it was for God to come in the flesh. Instead of using a towel, he used the flesh of Mary and took on the form of a servant. Though he thought it not robbery to be equal with God, the Bible said he humbled himself, wrapped himself up with the towel of flesh, and came to us when we were dying in sin and said, how may I serve you? But the bell ringer for me, the cliffhanger for me, is when I realized that when he knelt down on the floor, that if he washed the disciples' feet, he had to wash Judas's feet too. They completely died on me altogether. Here he is on the floor, washing the feet of the guy who was betraying him, who had done a deal behind his back for 30 pieces of silver. Anybody else would have broke his foot. They'd have got down there and just start pulling his toes, just. He washed the feet of the guy who was responsible for nailing his feet.